In the autumn of 2024, a backpack was found near an abandoned coal mine in West Virginia. Inside were several journals and a digital recorder belonging to Elias Thorne, a journalist who specialized in debunking urban legends. Elias was never found. These are the transcripts of his final days. The drive up to Blackwood Creek was the kind of journey that made you question your sanity. The GPS had given up 30 miles ago, leaving me with nothing but a hand-drawn map and the oppressive shadows of the ancient oak trees. Just a local legend, I muttered to myself, gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. I was headed to the Miller estate. In 1974, an entire family of 5 had vanished from their dinner table. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just 5 cold plates of pot roast and a house that felt like it was breathing. For 50 years, locals refused to go near it. They claimed the woods took them. I pulled up to the cabin just as the sun dipped below the jagged mountain peaks. The air here was different. It was heavy, smelling of damp earth and something metallic, like old coins or dried blood. The cabin was a skeletal structure of rotting wood and cracked stone, standing defiantly against the encroaching vines. I stepped out of the car. The silence was absolute. No birds, no crickets, no wind. It was the kind of silence that felt like someone was holding their breath right behind your ear. I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the front door. It swung open before I could even touch the handle. The hinges groaned, a long, high-pitched wail that sounded disturbingly like a human sob. "Hello?" I called out. My voice didn't echo. It felt flat, swallowed by the darkness of the hallway. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam cut through the dust motes, revealing a long corridor lined with faded floral wallpaper. And there, at the very end of the hall, stood a small wooden rocking horse. It was moving, slowly, back and forth. Creak, creak, creak. There was no breeze. There was no one there. But as I stepped closer, I saw something that made my heart hammer against my ribs. In the thick dust on the floor, there were fresh footprints. Small, bare footprints leading from the kitchen directly to where I stood. And they were still wet. The rocking horse stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the sound. I stood frozen, my flashlight beam trembling as it hit the small wooden toy. It didn't fall over, it just stayed perfectly still, as if a hand had reached out and grabbed it. I knelt down to examine the footprints. They were small, probably a child's, and they weren't made of water. I touched the edge of one. It was thick, dark, and sticky. Oil? No, it was old crankcase oil mixed with something that smelled like copper. A sudden thud came from beneath my feet. It was heavy, rhythmic, and muffled. Someone or something was hitting the floorboards from the cellar below. Thump, thump, thump. I followed the sound to a heavy wooden hatch in the kitchen floor, partially hidden under a tattered rug. My rational mind told me to run back to the car, to drive until I hit a main road and never look back. But the journalist in me, the part that needed to see the truth, won the fight. I grabbed the iron ring of the cellar door and pulled. It resisted at first, then gave way with a spray of splinters. A gust of air rushed up from the hole and I gagged. It was the smell of a tomb, stagnant, freezing, and ancient. I began to descend the narrow wooden stairs. Each step felt like a choice I couldn't undo. When my boots hit the dirt floor of the basement, the temperature dropped at least 20 degrees. My breath turned into white mist in the air. I panned my light around the room. It wasn't just the cellar. The walls were lined with hundreds of small, hand-carved wooden dolls. They were everywhere, stacked on shelves, hanging from the ceiling by twine, tucked into the stone crevices. Each one was missing its eyes. In the center of the room stood a heavy oak table. On it sat a single, modern item, a child's backpack. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't from 1974. This was new. I recognized the brand. It was a popular one from the nearby town. I unzipped the bag. Inside was a coloring book, a half-eaten granola bar, and a small silver locket. I opened the locket. Inside was a photo of a young girl with bright blue eyes. But as I looked at the photo, the girl's face began to distort. The ink seemed to run, turning her eyes into black pits. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. Click, click. Not now, I hissed, slapping the side of the light. It stayed dark for 3 seconds. 3 seconds of total, suffocating blackness. When the light finally surged back to life, I wasn't alone. A tall, spindly figure was standing in the far corner, facing the wall. It was wearing a tattered gray dress that looked like it belonged to another century. Its skin was the color of wet parchment, stretched too tight over its bones. "Ma'am?" I whispered, my voice cracking. The figure didn't turn around. Instead, its neck began to twist. It didn't move its shoulders. Its head just rotated 180 degrees until it was looking directly at me. There was no face, just smooth, pale skin where the eyes and nose should have been, and a jagged vertical slit for a mouth that was stitched shut with rusty wire. From behind the wire-stitched mouth, a voice came. It wasn't a scream, it was a perfect, chilling imitation of my own voice. The flashlight beam danced wildly as my hands began to shake. The thing in the corner, the stitched one, didn't move toward me. It just stood there, its head tilted at an impossible angle, mirroring my own terrified posture. "Just a local legend," it repeated, the voice identical to mine, but layered with a wet, bubbling sound, like someone trying to speak through a throat full of pebbles. I didn't wait for a third repetition. I lunged for the wooden stairs. My boots slipped on the damp earth, and I scrambled upward, my fingers clawing at the rotted wood. I could hear it moving behind me. It wasn't walking, it was scuttling. The sound of its long, needle-like fingers scraping against the stone walls sounded like dozens of oversized insects. I reached the top and slammed the cellar hatch shut. I dragged the heavy kitchen table over the door, the wood screaming against the floorboards. Bang! 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 Something hit the hatch from below with the force of a sledgehammer. The table jumped. I backed away, tripping over a kitchen chair, my breath coming in jagged gasps. I needed to get to the car. I needed to leave this valley and never look back. I bolted for the front door, but as I reached the hallway, I stopped dead. The rocking horse was gone. In its place stood a tall grandfather clock that hadn't been there when I entered. Its glass face was shattered, and the pendulum wasn't swinging side to side. It was swinging in a circle, defying gravity. I ignored it and grabbed the front door handle. I twisted. It wouldn't budge. I pulled, I pushed, I threw my shoulder against it. It was like trying to move a mountain. The door wasn't locked. It was as if it had become part of the wall itself. "Help!" I screamed, pounding on the wood. "Is anyone out there?" From the other side of the door, a voice responded. "Is anyone out there?" It was my own voice again, muffled, coming from the porch. Then I heard the sound of my car door opening and closing. The engine of my SUV roared to life. Through the narrow side window, I saw my own car headlights cut through the fog. I watched in silent horror as my own vehicle, driven by something I couldn't see, began to slowly pull away from the house, leaving me stranded in the dark. I was no longer the hunter of stories. I was the prey. I turned back toward the kitchen, and my heart nearly stopped. The heavy oak table I had pushed over the cellar hatch was now floating 3 feet off the ground. Underneath it, the hatch was wide open. A pale, spindly hand, too long to be human, gripped the edge of the floorboards. Then another. I realized then that the house wasn't just a building, it was a trap, a rib cage, and I was currently sitting in the stomach. I ran toward the stairs leading to the second floor. It was the only way left to go. As I climbed, the walls began to bleed that same dark metallic oil I had seen in the footprints. I reached the top landing and ducked into the first room I found, a child's bedroom. I slammed the door and locked it. I turned around, my flashlight scanning the room, and that's when I saw the walls. Every inch of the wallpaper was covered in writing. not in ink, but scratched into the plaster with fingernails. Thousands of lines repeating the same sentence over and over. The scratching sound didn't stop. It was coming from inside the walls now, a dry, rhythmic rasping like sandpaper on bone. I slumped against the bedroom door, my flashlight being flickering. The batteries were dying. In the fading light, the words on the wall seemed to writhe like a nest of snakes. It takes the voice first. I scrambled toward a small nightstand near the bed. It was the only piece of furniture that hadn't rotted through. I yanked the drawer open. Inside, tucked beneath a rusted pair of scissors and a dried-up rose, was a leather-bound journal. The cover was stained with dark circles, tears, or perhaps something worse. I opened it. The handwriting was frantic, the ink smudged by trembling hands. It belonged to Sarah Miller, the eldest daughter who had vanished in 1974. October 12th, 1974. It started with the echoes. Daddy thought it was the wind in the chimney, but I heard it clearly. It was Mama's voice calling from the woods, even though Mama was right there in the kitchen. Then the animals went silent. No birds, no crickets, just the skin stitcher waiting at the tree line. It doesn't just kill you, it steals you. It peels the sound from your throat and the face from your skull. If you hear your own voice outside the door, do not answer. To speak to it is to give it your soul. A cold chill washed over me. I looked at the silver locket I'd found in the cellar. The girl in the photo, this was her room. Thump. Something heavy hit the bedroom door from the hallway. Then a soft, familiar sound followed. "Elias? Are you in there?" I gasped. It was my mother's voice. My mother, who was 3,000 miles away in a nursing home in Oregon. The tone was perfect. The slight rasp, the gentle lilt she used when she was worried. "Elias, honey, it's cold out here. Open the door. I can't see anything." I lunged for the door handle, my heart screaming, "Save her!" But Sarah's words flashed in my mind, "Do not answer." I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. I forced myself to remain silent. "Elias?" The voice changed. It was no longer my mother. It was my boss from the newspaper. "Elias, this is a great story, but you're taking it too far. Come out, let's get a drink and talk about the front page." Then the voices began to overlap, a cacophony of everyone I had ever known, my third-grade teacher, an old girlfriend, a stranger I'd interviewed once. They were all screaming, crying, and whispering my name at once. The door began to groan under the pressure of the entity leaning against it. I turned back to the journal, flipping pages frantically, looking for a way out. I found a page near the end, written in what looked like charcoal. "The cellar is a lie. The attic is a trap. The only way out is through the mirror in the hall. But the mirror doesn't show your face, it shows the stitcher's heart. Break the glass and the house will scream. When the house screams, the door will open." The voices outside the door stopped. "Elias," a new voice said. This one was different. It wasn't someone I knew. It was a deep, guttural vibration that felt like it was coming from my own chest. "I know you're reading the book." The door handle began to turn, slowly. The lock clicked. I looked at the window. It was barred with heavy iron grates. There was no escape but back into the hallway. I gripped the journal and the rusted scissors from the nightstand. I had to find that mirror. I stood up, my flashlight finally dying, leaving me in the pale gray moonlight filtering through the dusty window. The door creaked open. Standing in the doorway wasn't the spindly woman from the cellar. It was a reflection of me. It wore my jacket, it had my height, but where its face should have been, the skin was being pulled and tucked by long silver needles that moved on their own, stitching a mask of my features onto its blank head. It held a needle up, threaded with a long, thin strand of human hair. It pointed the needle at my throat. "I need more thread," it whispered in my voice. The thing that wore my face stepped into the room. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, its limbs snapping into place like a broken marionette. The silver needle in its hand glinted in the moonlight. "I need more thread," it repeated. This time, the voice was a perfect match. Even the slight tremor of fear I felt was reflected in its tone. I didn't think. I lunged. I swung the heavy leather journal at the creature's head. It didn't flinch. The book hit its face, and for a second, the skin rippled like liquid. The half-stitched mask of my face slid to the side, revealing the raw, featureless muscle beneath. It didn't bleed. It oozed that black, metallic oil. I bolted past it, my shoulders slamming into its cold, leathery frame. I tumbled into the hallway. The corridor had changed again. What was once a narrow passage of peeling wallpaper was now an endless gallery of mirrors. Large, ornate, silver-framed mirrors lined both sides of the hall, but they didn't reflect the hallway. In the first mirror, I saw the Miller family sitting at their dinner table in 1974, their faces frozen in silent screams as invisible threads pulled them into the ceiling. In the second, I saw a hiker from the 90s, his mouth already stitched shut with rusty wire. I ran, my boots thundering against the floorboards. "The mirror that shows the stitcher's heart," I gasped, searching for the one Sarah's journal had described. Behind me, I heard the snip, snip, snip of the creature's needles. It was gaining on me. I reached the end of the hall and stopped. There was one mirror left. It was small, cracked, and framed in human bone. When I looked into it, I didn't see myself. I didn't see a victim. Saw a black, pulsing mass of thorns and veins. In the center of the mass was a heart. Not a human heart, but a clockwork mechanism made of gold and bone, ticking with a wet, heavy sound. This was the anchor. This was what kept the house alive. "Elias, stop!" I turned. The skin stitcher was only 5 feet away. Its transformation was almost complete. It now had my eyes, my exact shade of brown, but they were wide and vacant. It reached out a hand, and I noticed its fingernails were gone, replaced by the same silver needles. "If you break it, we all die," the creature said. "The Millers, the others, we are all part of the house now. Do you want to kill us again?" It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. The voices of the trapped were being used as a shield. I looked at the rusted scissors in my hand. I looked at the bone-framed mirror. The ticking of the heart inside the glass grew louder, matching the rhythm of my own terrified heartbeat. "You're not real," I whispered. "I am as real as the fear in your throat," the stitcher replied, stepping into the moonlight. It began to sew its own chest, pulling a thick black thread through its skin, mimicking a heart surgery. "Break it, and you stay here forever in the dark. Join us, and you'll never be alone again." I raised the scissors. The creature screamed, a sound made of 1,000 dying voices. I didn't aim for the creature. I drove the metal blade straight into the center of the bone-framed mirror. Crack! The sound wasn't just glass breaking. It sounded like a tree trunk snapping in a storm. The house let out a literal howl. The floorboards beneath me buckled, and the walls began to fold inward like a collapsing cardboard box. The skin stitcher froze. Its face began to unravel. The threads snapped one by one, and the stolen skin sloughed off its body like melting wax. Then, the darkness rushed in. Not the darkness of a room, but the darkness of a void. I felt myself falling, the screams of the house fading into a distant, ringing silence. I woke up gasping for air. The sun was hitting my face. I was lying in the middle of a dirt road, the morning dew soaking through my shirt. My head throbbed, and my hands were covered in tiny, microscopic scratches. I looked around. My SUV was parked 20 feet away, the engine idling quietly. The door was open, just as I had left it. I looked toward the woods where the Miller estate should have been. There was nothing. No cabin, no rotting wood, just a dense thicket of pines and a rusted no trespassing sign that looked decades old. A dream? I whispered. My voice sounded thin, raspy. I crawled to my car and gripped the side view mirror to pull myself up. I looked at my reflection. I looked normal, exhausted, pale, but normal. I reached into my pocket and felt something hard. I pulled it out. It was the silver locket and Sarah Miller's journal. They were real. It wasn't a dream. I got into the car, my hands shaking so hard I could barely shift into gear. I drove. I didn't look back. I drove until I hit the interstate, until I saw gas stations and McDonald's and people, blessed, noisy, living people. I pulled into a rest stop 3 hours later. I needed to call the police, to tell someone about the journal, about the bodies that might still be under that soil. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. 911? What is your emergency? The operator asked. I opened my mouth to speak, to tell her about Blackwood Creek, to tell her about the skin stitcher. But no sound came out. I tried again. I strained my throat until it hurt. Nothing. Just a dry, hollow wheezing. I looked into the rearview mirror of my car. I opened my mouth wide. My tongue was gone. In its place, my mouth was filled with a nest of black silk thread, and stitched into the inside of my cheek in tiny silver letters was a single word: thanks. From the back seat of my car, I heard a voice, a familiar, gentle lilt. "Don't worry, Elias," my mother's voice whispered from the shadows of the trunk. "I'll do the talking from now on."